Now that you're an expert on doing your subdivision exercise and you know how all of the notes work, I have some Legos that we're going to use to put together some different rhythms. So if you see these Legos, they're going to be sort of representing some different note lengths, different rhythms, and we're going to be practicing fitting them into our time signatures like the subdivision exercise, but now instead of going from the whole notes straight through the subdivisions, we're going to be mixing and matching them to create real rhythms that you might hear in music or you might play in your music. So the way that this is going to work is we have our different Legos. They don't have to be the big Legos. You can do this with small Legos. The color doesn't matter at all. What does matter is how many sort of dots there are on the top. So each one dot is going to represent a 16th note. So here, this little Lego is our 16th note. So we have one 16th note. And if you remember from the rhythm tree, when we put two 16th notes together, that becomes an 8th note. So our 2 dot block is going to be our 8th notes. Or another way you can think about it is if we split our 8th note in half, we would have our 1 16th note. And if we put 2 8th notes together or 4 16th notes together, then we have our quarter note. Now the other thing that I have are some sort of time signature blocks. So these are the little bit shorter ones, but it still has 4 on it. So if I put these together like this, you might be able to recognize this time signature. So what we have here are 4 16th notes, 4 16th notes, 4 16th notes, 4 16th notes. So we have 4 sets of 4 16th notes. And do you remember what kind of note 4 16th notes is? This one right here? It's our quarter note. So in this time signature that I've set up, we have 4 quarter notes. And if you remember from how time signatures work, the number of them, 4 of them, tells us the top number. The type of note, being a quarter note, tells us the bottom number. So this is 4, 4, which again is our most common time signature. So now that we have the time signature laid out, we could put it with our steady beat and we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Or if we're thinking about all of the subdivisions with the 16th notes, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. But you notice that even though there's that subdivision, we're still having our main beat, our metronome click, or the numbers are landing on each of the 4 beats. Now from here, we can have fun putting together whatever kinds of rhythms we want. So we can do a very basic one with just 4 quarter notes, and again with our steady beat lining up on each beat, we would just have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that's a pretty straightforward rhythm. Maybe we can make it a little bit more exciting, and instead of a full quarter note on this first beat, let's try doing 2 8th notes. So remember the way that we count our 16th notes, 1 E and a, 2 E and a. So for this one, our 2 8th notes are going to land on 1 E and a. So you can see where the blocks separate is where the important change is. That's where the new note is. So now we can take this rhythm that we've set up here and put it with our steady beat and play this actual rhythm. So if our steady beat is 1, 2, 3, 4, with all the 16th notes, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. And then we're only going to play, or we're only going to say the count when it's a new block. So for here it's 1 and, just like we talked about. So let's try doing that together. Our steady beat, this first one's going to be 1 and 2, and then from there it's just the quarter notes that we did already. So 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. So you can see I'm tapping each of the 16th notes because all of those 16th notes are still there and put together into these rhythms. So the 8th notes has the 2 16ths, the quarter notes have the 4 16th notes put together, and then we're left with 1 and 2, 3, 4 for the actual notes that we hear and play. If I play that on my clarinet, it sounds something like this. let's try counting that along with me. So 1 and 2, 3, 4. Ready? Go. So that's how this rhythm works. We can change it up again. Maybe let's get rid of this quarter note, and instead let's put another eighth note there, and let's make it 2 eighth notes. So now this quarter note has split into 2 eighth notes, and now the measure is going to be very similar. We have the first half, and then the second half are actually the same on each of them. So again, let's get our steady beat going. I'm gonna go a little bit slower now that we have more complicated rhythms. And again, we still have the same 16ths. If we know that beat 1 is 1 and, then beat 3 is pretty similar, right? But instead of 1 and, it's now 3 and, because we're on the third beat over in the time signature. So let's give this one a try. Ready, go. 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3 and 4. So that's how this rhythm would work. And let's try changing it up again. Let's try taking out that quarter note, and let's make this one really exciting, and let's do 16th notes. So now we have our 1/16 note blocks. They line up here. And now, because we have all the 16th notes, starting on beat 2, this would be counted 2, E, and So you can see how this is still and, this is still E, but now we have a note on every single one of them in the beat. So we still have 1 and, like we had before, but now 2 E and 3 and then still our long 4. So let's try putting that one together. 1 and 2 E and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 E and 3 and 4. Now, let me try playing that on my clarinet while you count it. So one more time, the counting is 1 and 2 E and 3 and 4. With the steady beat, let's give that a try. Ready, go. And that is how the rhythm works. Now we can get even more creative with how we mix these things up. What if we took out this eighth note? Now there's nothing there, but that still counts as a rhythm. Now instead of playing a note here, we're going to have silence there, which is called a rest. So instead of doing 3 and 4 when we had the note there, now that that's gone, it's 3, 4, there's that silence there. So let's try that with the steady beat. 2, ready, go. 1 and 2 E and 3, 4, 1 and 2 E and 3, 4. So you see how there's no sound happening there, and it'll be even more obvious when I play it on my clarinet how that rest sounds. So you try counting along while I play this rhythm. Ready, go. And that's the way rests work. You'll notice the rests look a little bit different in the music than the actual notes do. So they have their own sort of note value to them. Here's a quick rhythm tree of what whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, and actually all rests. Whole rests, half rests, quarter rests, eighth rests, 16th rests. That's how they all look. They work exactly the same as the note values. They just look a tiny bit different. Now let's get even more creative here. Let's take off that last quarter note that we've been doing, and let's do this one with an eighth note here at the very end of the measure. So now we've made this rest a little bit longer, where the and of beat 3 is a rest, and also the first part of beat 4 is a rest, and we don't play it until the and here. So the way this is going to sound with our steady beat always is 1 and 2 E and 3, and 1 and 2 E and 3, and 1 and 2 E and 3, and. So you can see we're still keeping track of all of these notes even though they're silent. Resting doesn't mean that you can just relax and not worry about anything, you still have to keep track of all of those so that you're ready to play when that next note is. You'll also notice that this next note sort of leads back to beat 1, and 1, and 1. So it might be easier to think about this note leading back to here. 1, and 2, E, and a 3, and 1. And that makes it a little bit easier to know when this happens, because it happens leading to 1 over here. So let me try playing this one, and you counting along with it. Ready? Go. And that's how that rhythm works. Now we can get even more creative here. So far, everything's been sort of contained within its own beat, but it's actually possible for rhythms to travel across the beat. So say we took a quarter note, and we've already taken up 1 and 2E, so the next spot for it to start on is the and of 2, but we can still put a quarter note there on the and of 2. Notice that the quarter note is still 4 16th notes long, so it's going to take up the rest of 2 and a, but it's also going to spill over into beat 3 and take up 3E of beat 3. So let me try counting this one so you can see sort of how it works with our steady beat. 1 and 2E and 1 and 2E and. So you can see how I'm saying and, but sustaining it for and all the way into beat 3. So we're still snapping our finger here at the start of beat 3 in the time signature, but I'm sustaining through. So let's try counting that one together, just counting it. Ready, go. 1 and 2E and 1 and 2E and. And if you can still snap here, that's really good, because that can sometimes be a little bit tricky because we're sustaining a note over our snapping of the steady beat. But this happens in music all the time, and you might actually notice that this one sounds kind of cool. So let's get our steady beat going again and try counting this one while I play it. Ready, go. So you can see how that note bleeds over beat 3 and takes the end of 2 and the first half of 3. So that's kind of a cool rhythm too. And you can get as creative as you want. You can put any combination of notes onto this grid of 4/4 that you want, and it'll still be 4/4. The thing that you can't do is change our time signature. That's what the structure I was talking about of the time signatures, is that this will be 4/4 no matter what. Every single 4/4 measure has this underlying structure to it. So no matter what combination of different blocks you're putting on top, whether it's quarter notes, eighth notes, 16th notes, half notes, or whole notes, I don't have any big enough Legos to be a half note or a whole note, but no matter what combination you're putting there, it's all going to have to fit into the structure of the time signature. But remember, we talked earlier that there's actually different time signatures. So this is 4/4 because we have our 4 quarter notes, but we can actually change this up. What if we took away a quarter note? So now we're left with 1, 2, 3 quarter notes. So what time signature would this be? Remember, the top number of the time signature determines how many there are per measure, or how long the measure is. And the bottom number determines what kind of note. So this is still a quarter note kind of note, but now instead of 4, there's 3. So instead of 4/4, which we were in before, now we're in 3/4. The same ideas apply as the 4/4, where you can put any combination of eighth notes, quarter notes. Let's try one real quick. Let's put an eighth note there, a quarter note there. Let's do a couple 16th notes, and then an eighth note at the end, and a couple more 16th notes there in the middle, if I don't drop all my 16th notes on the ground. So now we have all of the 16th notes in the measure filled up with eighth, quarter, 16th, 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 and an eighth note. So the way that we would count this is we have 1 and a 3E and. So that's how we're filling up our 1, 2, 3 steady beat. So let's try counting this. So we have our steady beat going. Remember that we're only counting to 3 now instead of 4. And the rhythm lines up. 1 and a 3E and 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 1. And that's how this rhythm would work. Let's try counting that while I play it. 2, ready, go. So that's how that combination of rhythms work. Now we talked about some other kinds of time signatures as well that don't just change the length of the measure, but sort of change how skinny or fat our beats are. So you notice that in 4/4 and in 3/4, our beats are taking up 4 16th notes. Each beat is 4 16th notes long. We can get rid of these and change up our time signature. Let's try with 3 beats. So these ones you can see, instead of having our 4 dots, these ones only have 3 dots. So now we have a different time signature. This one, we're going to represent these as single eighth notes rather than quarter notes, because now we're in 6/8, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notes, and they're going to be represented as eighth notes. Now in 6/8, often the way it's organized is similar to 2/4. 2/4 would look something like this, where we have 2 with 4 16th notes, but now instead of 4 16th notes or a quarter note per beat, now we have 3 eighth notes or a dotted quarter note per beat. So we can represent that with our individual eighth notes, with 3 of them per beat, and this rhythm would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can see still how it's 2 beats, but there's 6 eighth notes because our beats are a little bit fatter. Instead of being 4 16th notes or 2 eighth notes per beat, now we have 3 eighth notes per beat that are a little bit longer. This is a little bit more advanced, so it's okay if it's a little tricky, but I bet with some practice you'll get the hang of it pretty quickly. So we have our 3 eighth notes and 3 eighth notes. So the way that we count this again is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, with our beats being organized into those 2 bigger beats. And we can change these eighth notes up however we want. We can maybe take out a couple of them and change them out with rests, and we're left with 1, 4, 5, 6, 1, 4, 5, 6. And that's how this rhythm would work in 6/8. Let's try another different rhythm. Let's say we're going to take this one, which is now a quarter note because it's 2 eighth notes put together. If this is an eighth note, then these are 2 eighth notes. Again, remember our quarter notes used to be this light blue when they were 4 16th notes long. Now they're dark blue and 2 eighth notes long, but remember 2 eighth notes, 4 16th notes are the same. So it doesn't matter what color, it matters more how it's fitting in. So our 2 eighth notes here combine together into a quarter note. Let's put another eighth note there, and let's do this rhythm. So now we still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but where we're playing is a little different. Hopefully you can see where those are split up. You know, again, I said colors doesn't matter, so I'm gonna make the color not matter and switch those blue eighth notes out with white eighth notes. Still eighth notes, still one button, one pointy part on our Lego, so it's still an eighth note there. So let's try this one. So we have 1, 2 is taken up by our quarter note, 3 is an individual eighth note, 4 is an individual eighth note, and then 5 and 6 are a quarter note. So this one would be with our steady beat, 1, 3, 4, 5, 1, 3, 4, 5, 1, 3, 4, 5, 1, 3, 4, 5. Let me try playing that and you counting along, again with the same steady beat. Ready, go. So that is how we can use our Legos to sort of demonstrate some different rhythms. I encourage you to sort of play with this on your own. Remember that whatever these dots are is how the time signature is going to work. So whether you have 2 of 3 eighth notes each, where we're in 6/8, or if you have 2 with 4 16th notes, where it's quarter notes, and we're in 2/4 or 3/4 or 4/4, or however many of this size block that you happen to have, then you can try placing different rhythms on it. But you can see how no matter what the time signature is or what rhythms we place on top of the time signature, that underlying steady beat stays the same for that time signature. And we have our steady pulse going, whether it's with just our own steady pulse or with the metronome to keep it steady. But that's how all of the rhythms come together. You have your steady pulse, that gets organized into your time signatures. Then you can put whatever rhythms you want on top of that using the rhythm tree. And if you're practicing your subdivision exercise and playing around with the Legos to find different rhythms, then you're going to be in great shape. And the next step is from the Legos is you can actually take it and write it out on your music like we had in the demonstrations here or the examples with the actual music, how our 16th notes turn into actual 16th notes, the eighth notes are actual eighth notes, etc. for whatever rhythm you build on top of this. And if you can write those out and you can clap and count them, or you can snap and count them with that steady beat, even better with a metronome, then you're going to be a rhythm expert. So good luck. That's how any rhythms work. All time signatures, all combinations of rhythms. You are now an expert as long as you remember to practice and get comfortable doing this. So good luck learning your rhythms. And in the next video, we're going to talk about the next big important piece of music, which are the actual notes.